Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our panel discussion of the patient-centric growth potential you can't afford to miss. I know we've just heard a very important and interesting presentation from Ken Getz about patient centricity and how it all factors into clinical trials. And now we're going to have the opportunity to talk with some experts in the field, both from the patient perspective, the clinician perspective, and the industry perspective. So let me start by introducing our panel, and I'll turn it over first to Chris Anselmo, who represents the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Chris, can you say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Anselmo, and I'm a Market Intelligence Manager at the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I'm also someone that's living with an adult onset form of muscular dystrophy. So I've had both kind of the patient perspective and have living as a non-patient in my life. So in the last 12 years, I've had the opportunity to participate in several patient-centric related initiatives, and I've kind of seen both the good and the bad of patient experience and the patient empowerment. So it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Chris. Next, I'd like to introduce Neil Bacon. Neil's coming to us from the UK, so thank you for making that long journey over the wire there, Neil. Neil is a clinician and a sequential founder of multiple digital enterprises. Neil, can you say a few words?
Yeah, Francis, thank you. And to the audience, thank you. I was a clinician in Oxford and Harvard doing clinical nephrology. And then for the last 25 years, I combined that with the creation of a number of digital health businesses, which have become, appropriately enough, more and more patient-centric. And of course, as all of us know, our organizations, our clinicians, and indeed our governments, unless the healthcare they're delivering is truly citizen-centric, it's not going to survive the next 20 years. So nice to meet you.
Thank you, Neil. Next, we'll go to John Cohen from Wipro, and John heads up the Global Life Sciences Solutions area at Wipro. John?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm John Cohen. I lead consulting and industry solutions for Wipro Life Sciences. I joined Wipro about a year ago from Metadata Solutions, but for most of my career, having led life sciences and healthcare practice teams and professional services for EMC Consulting, which is now Dell Technologies.
Thanks, John. And finally, Phil Fasano. Phil is president of Zyter, as well as on a number of boards. And Phil, I'll leave it to you to fill in the details.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Phil Fasano. I'm currently president of Zyter, but have a good bit of experience in the healthcare domain as the former CIO of Kaiser Permanente during one of its most transformational times. And then subsequent to that, left healthcare into AIG, an insurance company, but also had a healthcare division. So from that perspective, bring that. But Kaiser had a good bit of patient centricity going on while I was there, and we certainly had an impact on that.
Great, thank you, Phil. And I know that the audience has heard it multiple times already this morning, but please do feel free to submit any questions you'd like us to address. This is an interactive panel, and we look forward to hearing what you're interested in, as well as what we'd like to tell you. So let me start by asking a question of our panel. And really, patient centricity is one of those big buzz terms right now. Everyone's talking about it. But from each of your perspectives, how is the pandemic going to impact what patient centricity is going to look like in the midterm and in the long term? So what should people start planning for? And Phil, let me start with you.
Well, I think the pandemic itself has put us in a position where every patient has to be at the center of just about everything. And it starts with the fact that we've made the move to telemedicine. And patients are finding that their care continuum and their care team revolves around themselves, their homes, their caregivers, and everyone they interact with. And they're able to do that now largely on their terms and at their convenience. So I think that starts to play through in a very big way, and it comes through certainly in a big way. The numbers I've been hearing just out of Kaiser, they're doing 41,000 televisits a day in just one institution. So we know that's exploded. But relative to patients, everyone has to now be focused on helping patients do self-care as well. So the whole element of what it means to be a patient, what it means to be a provider, and that dynamic has evolved substantially during this pandemic.
Interesting. Neil, what's your perspective?
Thank you. And yes, as you say, Phil, these changes that you're seeing in the States is clearly an international phenomenon. So I think there's another aspect. What we're really seeing is that care is being delivered when and where the patients want it, as opposed to when and where the organizations and the clinicians want it. And I know, having worked both in the States and in Europe, we've had years and years of clinicians and their organizations saying, no, it has to be done like this. No, sorry, you're the patient, but I'm afraid you have to come to us when we want. You have to use our data. And just in the same way as these meetings and board meetings have been transformed, where the barrier between home and office, home and hospital, home and practice or surgery have blurred, the same, of course, is true in healthcare. And I think what we're going to see, that it's going to be very hard for clinicians and their organizations to keep saying, no, we want things done like this, not just the consultation, but that just blurs into no, how you collect the data. The patients are going to say, well, sorry, here's the feed from my smartphone, my mobile device. Here's what a clinician in South America said, because I had a video consultation with them. And I think any organization or clinical group that try and impose their own, what now seem very artificial boundaries, are going to be caught out. You know, why? What is going to stop Apple, Amazon, any organization saying, actually, we're going to deliver global healthcare. We're going to take your data, see our doctor when you want. We will monitor your figures. We will proactively engage with you and help you and support you. The physical barriers, I think, the disappearance of physical barriers and the physical hospital, in many cases, clearly not all, are going to merely be a precursor for the removal of organizational and thinking barriers in the delivery of healthcare. I think it's going to be a fascinating next couple of, well, I was going to say couple of decades. I think a lot of these changes are going to happen in the next 5 years.
Great answer. Thank you. Chris, tell us what this means to you.
Yeah, I think one of the silver linings of this whole time that we're living in is just, a lot of patient, related initiatives, delivery of healthcare, all sorts of different aspects of the patient experience has all kind of become decentralized. And what's really exciting about this is that, really for patients, what's really most useful and most helpful is to, reduce as many barriers as possible to being able to receive care, to be able to participate in a study or a clinical trial, or even just give, input into something. And with these new technologies, telemedicine, being able to convene like a virtual, sort of group like this, there's a lot of opportunities to meet the patient where they're at and to be able to, really kind of find solutions that might not have been, top of mind before the pandemic. I think you're seeing a lot of, problem solving, a lot of adjustments on the fly, and obviously there's been some growing pains, but I think what we're going to net out is that, we're going to find that there's a lot of solutions that we've been able to develop during this time, whether it's, again, remote care or other solutions that are really going to pay dividends down the road. And I think, again, anytime you can make it easier for patients to participate, to share information, to evaluate them in a clinical setting, that's really just going to be extremely helpful. And just it'll be a really great, hopefully, takeaway from this time.
Thank you. And John, based on the comments that we've just heard, as well as what Ken Getz was presenting about the volume of data that's already being collected and is going to grow through this patient centricity, can you add a little technology spin to all of this for us?
Sure. So I think, just to build on what my fellow panelists have pointed out, the advent of these technologies and telemedicine and mobile health, artificial intelligence, machine learning, there's some buzzwords and so on, but what it really starts to drive toward is how to sort of bring the care to the patient in the way that they can consume it efficiently, effectively, with trust and greater access. And many of the drivers that we've had related to better health outcomes, lower cost of care, better patient experience, those of us in the technology community and in the healthcare and clinical care industry, right, looking at driving adoption of these technologies, COVID has really sort of helped clear the way by making more urgent the needs that even before COVID would definitely bring some of the benefits and patient experience and so on. And then now we've got, I think, health authorities around the world have sort of cleared the way as well by reducing real and perceived barriers from a regulatory perspective. So, this is a great opportunity to try to take some of those ideas, accelerate adoption, and then a key point that Chris has made during some of our prior conversations is that the technology may be great and appealing, but it's got to be in a form that it really is usable by the patient. Patient experience is positive. Otherwise, you don't get the patient activation, the adherence to therapy, and the desired effects. So those are all key characteristics. And then to the point around big data, advanced analytics. Again, the industry has been working very hard at trying to bring these technologies in a way that drive practical results. But you can start to see, again, with acceleration due to COVID, but even before that, many healthcare suppliers, sponsors, medical device companies looking to make the transition from delivering monotherapies to digital services that allow for digital therapeutics and care management that's more comprehensive. So all of these trends seem to be coming together in powerful ways.
Great, thank you. Before I move to a next question, would anybody on the panel like to respond additionally to any of the comments that you just heard?
Sure, I would actually like to make two more comments. One is, we've as an industry in healthcare have been striving toward something I've called real-time healthcare for almost a couple of decades now, with the advent of modern technologies, mobile devices, and so on. And all of it is really to be centered around the patient. COVID has now essentially released the genie from the bottle. There is no going back. And at this point, it's really about focusing. It always has been about the patient. I think, as Neil mentioned, it's always been at the convenience of the provider or the physician. And I think we're now in a place where it's at everyone's convenience. Everyone has the possibility of delivering the best care at the moment that it's needed, and on behalf of the patient. And in fact, the patients, who are rarely in front of doctors during the year, they might be at most an hour or two, can actually do so much with respect to self-care, given what most of us now have in the palm of our hands. And the fact that that's connected, or can be connected, to providing organizations. Providers can participate in that self-care and help the patient be activated toward better health. So we're now at a time where I sit back and go, the possibilities are endless, and the opportunity to improve quality, access, and really improve patient health is right in front of every one of us who wants to play a role in this.
So those are great points, Phil. And Neil, to leverage off of one of the statements that Phil just made, that there is no going back, and understanding that we are in a highly regulated industry, what's your take on how industry clinicians, regulators are going to manage that there is no going back?
Yes, I think the disruption, this disruption with its positive and negative effects is going to accelerate the fact that in just a few short years, huge swathes of healthcare are going to be digitized, automated, and indeed delivered virtually and in different environments. We all accept today that planes are so complex and there's so much data, they fly by wire. I think we're going to have the analogy in healthcare with our systems: primary care, secondary, community, mental health. Healthcare by wire is going to become the norm. And what that means isn't just the different convenience, but there will be numerous unseen algorithms, AI, computer systems, which will manage a significant amount of routine healthcare and will underpin many of the systems. Once you're transferring information digitally, the systems can sit in the middle before it gets to the clinician. You don't need to see this patient. And I think we're going to find that the next appointment for the patient isn't going to be set by the clinician. I'll see you in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. The the AI algorithms will actually recommend when that patient is next seen based on their clinical data, how they spoke during the video consultation, how animated they were. We already know that the phone in your hand can predict mental health risk and mental health illness amongst adolescents purely by how they tap on the keys on the keyboard. Multiply that up in a world where people are more accepting, and when I say the people, I mean the clinicians are accepting of a remote consultation, and the next step is obvious. I would like organizations to intermediate and actually tell me where I can get the best care. How often should I need to be seen? The odd simplistic nudge and hint to improve compliance, or have you remembered your medication? I think we're going to see a shift where those hints are going to be far less to the patient and far more to the clinician. You've missed this. You don't need to see that patient. The bot will have already contacted the patient, asked them to increase their diuretic long before they get to the clinic. It's going to be healthcare by wire, with the clinicians like pilots today sitting in the cockpit, hopefully not messing things up, and there to just oversee the machines.
So Chris, as a patient, how do you feel about those changes coming down the pike?
Well, I agree with everybody else that, the changes that are going to take place in the next few years, which have certainly been spurred on by this pandemic, are going to be pretty much revolutionary. They're going to just completely upend, kind of the models that we're accustomed to, both on the clinician side and the patient side. I would just add that, one thing to kind of keep in mind during this time as we're trying to figure out what works best, what doesn't work best, how to navigate it from a regulatory standpoint. It's just, again, just keeping the kind of the patient involved in the process, because we're kind of navigating all this ourselves. This is all new to us in terms of remote, telehealth care or prescription management, et cetera. We have a lot of great, insights, and we certainly can be kind of co-partners in this, and, anytime that we can offer our perspective, kind of share what works, what doesn't work. There's gonna be a lot of stuff that might seem great conceptually or on paper.
Mhm.
It might seem like it's going to be such an easier thing for patients, whether it's adherence to drugs or whatever, that may not work, or that just may not be effective, or may not collect the data that you'd hoped. So I think just kind of making sure that, you're kind of keeping the patient perspective top of mind, that you're reaching out to patients, whether it's convening a focus group or just even bringing a patient along board as a consultant. A lot of people just view patients as just patients, but also a lot of people have advanced degrees in the exact types of disciplines that you're working on yourselves, or in healthcare or marketing. And I think there's a lot of great insights and viewpoints that can be gleaned from that can help avoid a lot of mistakes by just trying things out at the very micro level, seeing does this work, will this work, as we're kind of navigating all of this, just making sure that we kind of have a seat at the table, but that also we can help you to avoid pitfalls later on that might be very costly.
Those are great points. So John, considering that there are all these considerations and a lot of choices to be made, what would you recommend as some steps that the audience should be considering taking right now?
Yeah, so I think is our key thing is sort of looking at the patient journey, right, through the all the different stages of the sort of care continuum, and not making it so much about technology, but what is the optimal experience, and then thinking about which parts of that journey are most suitable or amenable to what the state of the art can accomplish. And then again, to Chris's point, including patients in focus group, using an agile based approach where you're including feedback from the consumers of the products and services, and looking at it holistically across both human, digital services that are provided along that journey.
Neil, can you add to that?
Yes, I think there's going to be a really rapid and comprehensive need for transformation of the current approaches to healthcare regulation. The delivery of healthcare, obviously, we've talked about the regulation, the monitoring. How do you monitor the quality of healthcare when lots of it's done out of sight in a machine looking at data? And obviously, as a result of that, payment models. Is it the same service virtually? So I think those whole organizational and structural things are important. And they have to change as quickly as ever in any industry. When it's disrupted, the regulations, the monitoring, the systems catch up, the oversight catches up after the technology. But obviously, and I think it's critical. And as Chris says, if the patients aren't at the middle of this, and we always say that, but right now, in the next few years, the patients and their representatives, because it doesn't have to be the individual patient, they can be represented by digital organizations as well as conventional ones. They're going to have so much more mobility to actually say, I want my care somewhere else. Once people see, and once the organizations change the fact you don't physically have to be present for the care, or very, very rarely, why do I want? I'd actually like that expert in Brazil, or that expert in London, or that expert in Boston. Second opinions are going to be key, and obviously the data is going to have to move with the patient. So I think this is also going to accelerate the fact the patient's healthcare record, there may be copies of it held by organizations, insurers and payers. It's going to be in their cloud, on their device. I can see all my bank details, I can see all my travel plans. Why haven't I got every detail of my healthcare history, including X-ray images, CTs, in the palm of my hand, so that I can flick and share it with someone else's bot, someone else's intelligent, someone else, some other organization's AI can say, yes, my care is being optimized. I think it's going to be so interesting. And organizations that don't keep up with the patient, and as John says, we don't want pills, we don't want injections, we want complete services which combine the therapeutic agent, the device, the implant, the diabetes monitoring with a digital wrapper that integrates that with our lives. So I think, we've always said this before, but back to the original point, the pandemic has pulled the curtain away from the Wizard of Oz, as it were, and there's just, people aren't going to go back to the old way.
Great, thank you. So Phil, you look like you're thinking something. You want to share?
Well, again, Neil stirred a thought. I mean, when we talk about the regulatory environment, particularly in the United States, the fact that healthcare is a state-by-state activity, and that licensure for professionals, medical doctors, nurses, et cetera, is held at that level. And we had to have an executive order during the pandemic to allow an educated person in California to treat someone in Nevada. Just is beyond imagining in today's world, where digital has taken borders and made everything borderless. Education, knowledge transfers, and we have to get over ourselves here in the United States relative to some of those regulations, and they really are stayed in deep-rooted systems where people are getting paid as a consequence. And, the whole payment scheme is really upside down a bit. It needs to be focused more on patient outcomes and delivering great quality care and high degrees of access. The other point, though, I mean, when you think about that, assuming our country can get on with it, it opens the door to really innovating great care for patients with technology augmenting that care. So, the physicians are still the captains, but now you actually have a co-captain in the patient themselves, and the patient can really feel that they're now empowered to do the things that we've been asking them to do with respect to self-care, and take responsibility for their health, and start, as a country, everyone in the country getting to the point where we're all focused on better health. And one last point on the medical record, of having information in front of everyone who's treating you. A number of years ago, I said that having a medical record in front of a physician who's treating you should be a right, not a privilege. And in our environment here in the United States, our records are still woefully disconnected, and that becomes an obstacle to care, because your patient now has the responsibility to inform every provider of every pill they're taking, every condition they have. And we need to find ways in the United States to start to connect this in such a way that everyone who's treating every patient has all the information, and then the patients get, from that perspective, the absolute best of that provider.
Those are excellent points. So just to pivot a little bit, Chris, in addition to representing the patient perspective, you are also a marketing professional. Any insights you want to share from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I forgot who said it earlier, but patients are incredibly well informed about the options that are available to them, and word gets around if something works well, whether it's a product, whether it's a type of therapy or a type of treatment, or whether it's a digital product or a doctor, especially doctors. we have ways of communicating now that we never had before. We have forums, we have, we've developed friendships at patient conferences. And, from a marketing perspective, that word of mouth is incredibly important. And in this day and age, that's where, again, kind of going back to that patient centricity focus. If you're a company that's got that focus, that's going to be apparent to, the patients, the end users. Companies that really care, that really want to understand, and if they get something wrong, how they can make it better. Rather than companies that might turn a deaf ear to that, you're really missing out. You're not only missing out on great perspectives from people that are going to be your end users, but also, that might really damage your brand if you're seen as being inflexible or you're just not patient focused. You might, somebody might think that you might have other motives, which may not be true. You might have the best of intentions, but again, perception sometimes can be everything for better or worse. So I think just taking like an authentic patient-centric approach to what you're doing, and just again trying to have the patients top of mind and keeping them part of the process, I think will really have great benefits, because you don't have to be perfect. This is a learning time for all of us. Just showing that willingness to want to do what's best for the patients, to make their lives easier, to help, really goes a long way. And I think just again, a willingness to, admit what you don't know and just try to seek the answer and try to, get that perspectives that you're missing. That can be really great for your business. And I think it can build a lot of long-term credibility.
Great insights. Thank you. So this went so fast. We only have a few minutes left, like under 3 minutes. Oh, 2 minutes, as a matter of fact. If I go to each of you in turn, just a 1 second to 10 second blurb, final thought. John?
Yep. So I just would say that, one thing that we should also not lose sight of is the provider's experience, right? That the providers and the care team satisfaction, enabling them to spend the most quality time with their patient encounters. Technology plays a key role there. And then the point that isn't just sick care, but wellness, right? And providing that broad picture of information around the individual's care and wellness, so they develop those habits, right? So this all plays together.
Great, thank you. Neil?
Thank you. I was just going to sort of echo and sort of vigorously agree virtually across the ways with Chris. Transparency and online reputation is going to be critical. There's no hiding once these walls come down. Patients will want to and will video their consultation. They'll click record on the Zoom button, share it in their community, and 5,000 of their fellow patients who will comment on that consultation. Actually, I'd like to use that clinician, or they've missed that, or get a second view of that video. And transparency of outcomes, transparency of patient experience. Organizations delivering care are going to have to, as Chris says, worry about, maximize, benefit from their online reputation. They will be rated and reviewed like eBay sellers, like Airbnb rooms, and like Amazon goods. That puts the power in the hands of the patients. And I think it's a fabulously positive thing that will benefit the best clinicians and help the organizations that are struggling to really understand what their users, their patients, their citizens want.
Great, thank you. So we're right on the edge here. So Phil, if I can ask you just for a brief insight.
Sure. I think we are now in the age of 360 degrees of care and health. And the opportunity, frankly, is to delight everyone involved and improve everyone's lives. So we get away from physician burnout. We get to the point where patients are delighted with the kind of care they're getting, and that everyone in the whole system is healthier and performing at the top of their game.
And Chris, I'm going to go to you real quick because we're really out of time here. We're running into feedback. But...
Yeah, just going to say, in situations where there's so much uncertainty and things are changing so fast, I think the more that we can bring in different perspectives, whether it's a patient perspective, the provider perspective, that's ultimately going to lead to the best products and the best solutions. And don't be afraid to, say you don't know the answer to something, to seek out a different perspective. I think will ultimately be beneficial to everyone in the long run.
This has been fantastic. Thank you all so much. I wish we had another 2 hours. Thank you. And hopefully we'll get to work together someday soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.